like all these combinations of all these drugs, peptides, and so forth. But it is definitely, you can find a solution that works for you very specifically,
Yeah.
which I love, that you can
Yeah.
actually tailor those results. And like I said, you can do some effects that it's wild. It's wild
Yeah.
that you can, like, let me drop my blood pressure back into like slightly below normal range, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
It's
move
like
this compound.
you could
Yeah.
do whatever you want. It's like anything physiological that you want to change,
Yeah.
you can pretty much just do it, which
Yep.
is, totally insane when you actually think about it. And the average person doesn't get that. Like
Yeah.
they have no idea.
I think the
you
average
know.
person lives a life of, like, I've always said, like, they just listen to their GP and they don't realize that ultimately you are the CEO of your own health, and that doctor works for you.
Mhm.
You Hey, hello, welcome everyone to the Rise 41 podcast. I'm your host, Gonzalo Gonzo Herrero, and today I am joined by Molecular, my new friend Sean,
Hey
better
guys.
known as online as Molecular.
Yeah.
He's a fitness coach and an educator who has built a following by cutting through the noise and bringing us some practical, evidence-based perspective to training, nutrition, body composition, and physique transformation. Sean also can dive very, very deeply into the science of a lot of the things that we do in the fitness and health and wellness space. So, Sean, with that, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, man. Awesome.
Absolutely. Let's have a good time. Like, let's
Yeah.
let's start picking at that brain of yours.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how well it works at this point, but let's try. Yeah.
Don't worry, there are no wrong answers, so
Okay.
it'll be perfectly fine. So the first question, if you were a superhero, your origin story. So how did you find yourself here? Like, what piqued your interest in health and, well, I guess biomechanics and biology and all of the related fields that you're into? How did you end up here?
Yeah, well, I've got a background in biochem, so I did that. Um, but I think most of it was just taking Superdrol when I was 14, 15 from GNC, and
Hmm.
that kind of changed my life forever. I got into the biology side of things, from there, and getting into PEDs and nootropics and training
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So that's kind of where it all started. And since then, I've just been doing, a lot of research, just really getting into this stuff. It's kind of like my special interest, and it's what I enjoy doing. Even not relating to YouTube, it's always what I've enjoyed doing. So I'm kind of just, sharing my, research with people that I would basically just do otherwise, without, having the social media presence. And started coaching about three. Oh, more than that. Probably about 5 years ago now, 6
Okay.
years ago. And it's always been kind of a word of mouth thing with me,
Hmm.
until now, until I hopped on social media, which is, made the business quite a bit larger. But I've always been, into coaching and helping guys out, and, just trying to improve people's lives and health as much as possible. That's my big focus, is sort of trying to approach these things scientifically, so that we can, maximize, or I guess minimize people's harm when they're using anabolics and, other things. Specifically, I think that's something that many people in the space talk about, but I don't think it's executed as well as it could be in a lot of cases. And I
Gotcha.
think there's a lot more stuff that we can sort of do to keep guys healthy. And I try and talk about a lot of that stuff. That's really my main interest. It's not like necessarily getting these, trying to take as many drugs as possible, get as big as possible. I'm more into the, like, trying to keep people healthy and, alive for as long as possible, and, making it so, this stuff doesn't have as much of a negative impact on your health as it otherwise would. So I think that's my main goal with all this.
Okay, so one of the things that and just so the audience knows, the reason I met Sean was an infamous video apparently regarding EQ that
Yeah.
somehow got a lot of people talking, and my coach Paul Burnett had Sean on his Q&A, which is how we met. And I just found it fascinating, like a fascinating story. And let's talk a little bit. Let's start with, I guess, everyone's. If this video is going to be a hit, we'll talk about Tren and we'll talk about EQ. So
Okay,
that,
I'm down.
that guarantees that we'll get views.
Yeah,
But
there
in
you go.
any case, the reason I think that if I understood correctly, like video became such a thing is because you were very clear and very precise and detailed in your analysis and the effects of EQ, more so than most. Perhaps
Yeah.
the only person I can think of that is close to that analysis would be like Vigorous Steve, somebody like that at that level of depth. So tell me, what prompted you to write that video and record it and spread the word, so to speak?
I think primarily it was two things that kind of started showing up on my radar with coaching, which was, obviously we all know this, Primo is expensive,
Yeah,
Masteron's hard to get. And everyone started taking Boldenone. And, like Paul said, we started seeing issues with this stuff,
right.
a lot of issues. And I think that's kind of what prompted me that like, oh yeah, people are using this stuff. And maybe if I can talk about some of the negative side effects that I've seen anecdotally and sort of latch that onto some of the scientific data associated with it, although thin, I think, we can make a case for, maybe getting people to stop using as much of this stuff,
Right.
specifically like the higher dosing of Boldenone. I think that, we see, I mean, we were talking about this on Anabolic Bodybuilding, like it's a big problem, with the hematocrit and a bunch of other stuff. So I think it really prompted me to do it because it was kind of in the conversation and a lot of people were using it. So I
Yeah.
figured like, hey, it's going to be, and I knew I was going to get a lot better at making videos later. So I said, we'll keep the trend video for when I can make a really good video. Cause
Fair
like,
enough. Yeah.
I didn't want to like completely blow my load on the first one and make a
No,
trend video.
absolutely.
And then,
And let's
so
face it, for whatever reason, I mean, just because I think it's because Tren is such a unique compound in what it does and its effects and so forth that it fascinates people. It has a certain mystique in
mhm,
the enhanced community.
yeah,
But the other thing that a lot of people, like I'm starting to realize is, as you dive and learn more about this, you start realizing there weren't that many studies, actual good peer-reviewed science studies for this category of drugs. Like they're really, it wasn't
yeah,
meant to be used originally by bodybuilders. Most of these come from, either
yeah,
cancer prevention or some other
yeah,
uh, approach, which, makes
yeah.
it difficult, right?
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw, well, with specifically with Tren, I think often you hear in bodybuilding that, that compound was approved in humans, therefore it's safe. But
right,
people don't really understand the regulatory environment and of the 1970s. And don't come at me here. I know that Parabolin was approved later, but Tren was approved before
right.
Parabolin was approved. No one knows this except for me and a few people that I've told.
Mhm.
But I have historical evidence. It's a fact at this point.
Yeah.
But the regulatory environment of the 1970s was such that they basically, as far as I can tell, they gave it to 5 castrated mice and then
Yeah.
10 other rodents, and then
Uh-huh.
approved it in humans, essentially. So typically, when you approve a drug, it has to go through different layers of approval through human or mice and then monkeys and then humans or something like that. But this, trend specifically was basically just approved on the basis of some rodent studies, as far as I can tell. So, it's kind of
Gotcha.
an interesting thing there. Um, anyway, so that's kind of my take on trend specifically.
Gotcha. For some reason, like your image is frozen. I don't know if I'm hoping that it's the software being weird.
Yeah,
But
let me reload it. Sorry.
yeah, that's
Let me
okay. If worst comes to
we
worst, I can
keep
always edit
talking
it
though.
in.
I think the mic is still working. So
Yeah, the mic is still working, so we can continue like the conversation piece of it at least. So one of the things that that you mentioned and alluded to is the fact that in that regulatory environment, it was like the Wild West, basically, right? There we go.
yeah,
I can see you
yeah,
moving now.
yeah.
So okay,
Yeah,
it
we'll
says
just use my laptop camera here.
yeah, that's fine.
Um, the regulatory environment was basically like the Wild West, and it was one of those things where they were basically prescribing it for like vitality. Like that is actually one of the
Like a
indications.
quantifiable thing. You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
your
just totally.
vitality index.
Yeah, totally insane. So,
Right.
it's when you actually read some of the language of the 1970s, it's
Mhm.
much closer to like the like this traveling salesman with the potions and the wagons in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
1800s.
The
Yeah,
old
it's kind of that
so-called snake
vibe.
oil salesman kind of
Yeah, it really does kind of harken back to that. And it's
wow.
closer to that than the regulatory environment that we have now,
Yeah,
with testing. And they just didn't have a whole lot of blood work testing back then. I mean, they
right.
just had basically at that point in the 70s, I think they just had gotten ALT and AST so they could check liver enzymes like clinically.
Wow.
LDL cholesterol was kind of developed around
A
that
new thing.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, a new thing. So, all the things that we look at from the perspective of like, are these drugs safe? Are they not?
right.
They really didn't even have a lot of testing associated with it. So, it's funny because you hear guys say, "Oh yeah, no, it was approved in humans," and it's like, well, it's different than it
Define
was today.
approved, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those where it's more of a technicality term rather than an actual,
yeah,
uh, really rigorous process, which would be the
yeah.
assumption when you hear that, you know. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and
yeah,
I've got so many primary documents now.
mhm.
I have this French doping historian helping me out who's a
Oh wow,
doctor, and he's been like sending me just like massive amounts of documents on this stuff. So it's we've got some pretty interesting stuff in there in terms of the history and like having a timeline of when this stuff was first approved, its reapproval as Parabolin,
hmm
and all the associated like company documents and stuff like that I've kind of pulled. So we have a lot of really really cool historical information, you know and like we're talking about, it's not that this historical information is going to tell us anything, right?
right, right,
Useful, because it was insanity at the time. But but the it's just interesting, I guess, from a historical perspective. But these human studies for Tren are not going to tell us anything that we
yeah,
don't already know. Of course, they're
yeah,
just
for sure.
going to sort of give us a framework for how crazy things were. So I think reading through all these historical documents really what stood out to me specifically was not necessarily information in the studies or any of that stuff, but really, how crazy things were back then and really like how thin approved for humans meant in the 1970s,
Right, right. How
So
much more flying by the seat of your pants we were
yeah,
back then,
yeah,
you know.
exactly. I mean,
So
they studied these on rodents and then they made up indications after they gave them to rodents.
yeah, it's like
Like,
we'll give it
yeah.
with rodents. So I guess if the mouse weighs so many ounces, that's like a 200-pound man. Let's
Yeah.
figure it out. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally crazy stuff. So anyways, that's interesting historical tidbit. I
Yeah.
don't know if anybody really cares,
No,
but
no, and the other thing, like going back to your original, like say, like the information about EQ, the other thing that even though we may not have that much hard, science evidence-based data, now we have a lot of anecdotal of
Mhm.
years and years, decades now of usage, and we can see some of those original bodybuilders that perhaps used a lot of EQ and boldenone
I got
back
kidney
in the
failure.
day,
Yeah.
and we see what now that they're in their 60s and
Mhm.
70s. So how are they doing as a population? And sure, it's not a clean data set, but you
Yeah.
can probably figure out some trends like you and Paul were seeing, in
Mhm.
the blood work, even more so, over such a length of time. So,
And that's what I told Paul too was, all this information is interesting,
mhm,
right? All the science is interesting, but frankly, like as bodybuilders, especially when you're in touch with these coaches that have, hundreds of clients,
right,
and have seen thousands of blood panels, that's probably more valuable than any, rodent study is going to be, frankly.
for sure.
So I just want to make that clear for anybody that watches that Boldenon video and, thinks I'm just relying on the science. I typically let the anecdotal information guide the theoretical side. And then I look for information that supports what we see anecdotally. And if it, confirms it on both sides, like the anecdotal information lines up with, the mechanistic and theoretical data that, we see, in mice studies and in vitro studies and all those kind of things, then we can kind of make an assumption that maybe this is how something actually works on, a mechanistic level, right? Like,
So would it be fair to say that for you, the anecdotal information kind of primes your brain to then create or think up of the hypothesis that you would then kind of
Yeah.
try to apply the scientific method to prove or
Yeah.
disprove or explore in any case.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah, I think that's the main thing that I try to do is like if I see something, then it's like, can we find a reason for this happening and put,
Yeah.
a bow on it in a sense. So we like, so we have a good picture and it makes sense to people and so that they can kind of figure it out in their heads. But I think that's the main thing is like just going with the anecdotal information first and letting that guide your understanding
Yeah.
of what's happening, primarily. So
Another thing that I've noticed about you and your coaching style, even just having met you recently, just from like watching your videos and so on, is that you have a very holistic approach, it seems, to your coaching and your advice. That you're one of those coaches that few and far between that are considering, for example, the mental state of somebody, not just the physical blood work, but like the mental effects that a compound might have and so forth. Like, what are your thoughts on, because I feel like a lot of coaches are so, well, I guess focused. I guess that's their job, right? In
Mhm.
getting that enhanced athlete to perform or be the best they can be. And sometimes they might poo-poo the mental aspects of it. I'm an ADHD person, so
Yeah.
I'm always like super aware of my mental state. If
Mhm.
something feels off, something feels funny, 19 Noors, we know in some cases do have some impact on brain function and or mood, etc. Can you comment on that? Like how would you, for somebody who's looking into being an enhanced athlete, how much or how little would you say they should factor in that mental side if they're going for something that's, say, beyond Primo and Masteron, which we know are fairly low impact,
Mhm.
relatively safe or safer, I guess,
Yeah.
compounds than, say, your DECAs, your NPPs, or Tren for that matter,
Yeah,
or
my approach is any guys that are running anabolics in general, I'm worried about mental health as a baseline.
okay, so
So
you're
I have
already
yeah,
paying
no matter
attention
what
to it.
they're running. I mean, I've seen people have weird reactions to just high dose testosterone. I mean, sometimes it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
It's not, it's not frequent,
Mhm.
but sometimes you see that. So I have a mental health questionnaire on my
Nice.
check-in forms every month.
Mhm.
So I do weekly check-ins, obviously, but then I have like every month I'll do a mental health check for my guys, and I just
Yeah.
have them answer some basic like mental health diagnostic questions that cover anxiety, depression, any kind of bipolar, mood
Yeah,
disorder,
libido,
all that
all
kind of
the
stuff.
every
Yeah,
aspect.
exactly. So I think it's important to keep an eye on this stuff, especially when we're, especially like you said, running like 19 Nors and those
Mhm.
kind of things, because those can really screw people up. And I try not to really use DECA at all anymore, frankly.
Yeah, that's, well,
Um,
between the fact that it has the mental effects for some that we discussed, and then the things that you can't pull out quickly either if you get
yeah,
in trouble. That's
yeah.
the thing with
I
DECA
think the
specifically.
I think the main thing with a drug is like I think a lot of people neglect to do, a pros and cons analysis on each drug,
Mhm.
right? So what is DECA gonna do that like I don't know, more Primo can't, or maybe even Boldenone could, or a
Right.
little extra testosterone.
Mhm.
That's kind of my perspective is like, I don't think the juice is really worth the squeeze in that context. And
Okay.
I think a lot of this stuff, like with Tren, right, we can justify it because it has an incredible effect on body composition and
And it's very unique,
strength.
right, in how it
Yeah.
works compared
There's
to the
nothing
other
else that
ones.
does it. So we can
Right.
say as bodybuilders, yeah, like we can justify this drug and we can justify the side effects associated with it. But if it just doesn't have that benefit, it's
Mhm.
hard for me to recommend certain things, that can be achieved in a potentially a safer way, using something else. I think that's the way that I look at it is like a cost benefit analysis on pretty much everything I use in my clients so that we
Yeah.
can minimize harm, like I was talking about, as much as possible, so we're not
Right.
chasing our tail with side effects and stuff like that. So I try to keep things really, really simple, from every perspective in terms of people's protocols, supplementation, ancillaries, drugs, all of that. I try to keep it really basic and not do anything that, doesn't really have a clear benefit, to risk ratio, so.
Absolutely. So, what are your thoughts, kind of changing topics a little bit, but these are all topics that people find interesting. So, one of the things that me being into my background, I don't know if I ever shared that with you. I used to be obese, and I
Yeah,
am
me
a
too.
recovering,
Me
well, a
too.
recovering alcoholic, and incredibly ADHD addicted personality type, I'd like
Yeah.
going all in. So
You
like
hear
10
that a
years
lot in
ago.
bodybuilding.
Oh,
That's yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's almost like you decide to use your addictive powers for good,
Yeah, exactly.
because
Yeah.
that's what you do. You obsess
Yeah.
over something that's now
Healthy. Yeah.
healthy, or well,
Exactly.
healthier, like anything taken to
Yeah.
excess. We
Yeah.
know, when you're like 5'8" and 300 pounds,
Yeah.
you know, that's
Yeah.
that's a little much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in any case, but it's definitely better than doing hard drugs or party drugs and just or drinking yourself to an early grave.
Yeah.
But the
Totally.
thing is, having done the big weight loss and transformation, being like healthy and all that. Another factor, as I started learning about, and I'll call it biohacking for the sake of the short term, just to have
Yeah.
a quick short mnemonic term.
Fair enough.
Um, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen the explosion of peptides and popularity on social media and so forth. And, it seems to me like anything, it's just another tool. Now we have not just a tool, but many tools that can have some effects, etc. But on the one side, it's a fairly, speaking of the Wild West, there's a lot of people out there on social media with messages that are either false, conflicting, erroneous. I had kids at my gym come up to me and ask me to buy Retta.
Yeah.
Like, are you in Retta? I'm like, do
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you before I
Yeah.
admit to like a federal crime or something? Like,
Yeah.
what's,
Yeah. Right.
you know,
Yeah. Fair
but
enough.
it's especially with that's one thing that kind of concerns me about the younger population, the availability, because, back in the day, even getting something as extra testosterone was like, super hard to do. It was like you had to be friends with people in that community who had connections, and they
Yeah.
would kind of vet you and gatekeep a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now, literally, a kid with like a Coinbase account and a browser can have 50 peptides in their house next week.
Yeah. I
And
think it's a big problem.
okay,
I think
give me
yeah.
your thoughts on
I mean,
the
it's
matter.
hard because like obviously we don't want these things regulated by the government because that would ruin
Right,
our party, right?
it's not going to
But
help.
at the same time, it's like these kids are getting this stuff, and like at the end of the day, it's like where do you draw the line? And like I guess it's just going to happen at this point. There's kind of other than trying to educate people, on this stuff, I think that's really all you can try to do. But even a lot of like the kids don't want to listen. They don't want to listen to people, saying, harm reduction, this and that. They just want to take Tren and
It's
get
not
jacked.
sexy.
Yeah.
It's not very
They just want
sexy.
to, yeah, they just want to blast Tren, man. And they just want
Yeah.
to look good and get girls. And like, I get that. I mean, I was exactly the same when I was their age too. So I
Hey,
totally get
I'm
it. Yeah.
55, but I remember it wasn't that
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, so I
So,
mean, it is one of those things that's like it's pros and cons, man. So, this stuff being more popular is a great thing for the community, but it does seep over into, and not just kids, people that don't have that just frankly aren't smart enough to be doing this stuff.
yeah.
That just
Yeah.
don't have enough mental capacity. I mean, I
No,
get
for
it all
sure.
the time on my, on my Instagram Q&As, just like the questions that I get sometimes. I'm just like, "Oh man, what are we doing?"
Yeah,
Like,
because the question gives you an inkling of the mindset and mind
yeah.
frame behind it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. People asking about, insulin and Tren, and then you go to their profile and they look like just like a regular skinny guy. And it's like, man, it's
yeah.
not the time for Tren and insulin. Like,
It's
it's
the
just,
I always it's the things that work, that we know work and we've known for decades, which are diet, exercise, rest, the basics.
yeah,
Nobody wants to talk about the basics because they're boring, and that consistency is what paradoxically gives you the results, right? Being boring, eating the same crap every day,
yeah, exactly.
doing
Yeah,
the adding a little bit more weight, going to the gym yet again.
yeah,
So, and I get the exotic nature of, and also the for me it was always the curiosity of being able to effect change on my body and
hmm,
seeing what that is like, and trying all these new things. So
yeah,
there is a curiosity aspect, but definitely, when I think of the average person's ability to do math, and then somebody thinking about using insulin, and we've spoken about this with Paul too. He's a diabetic,
yeah.
5 units and 50 units can be the difference between you
Life
have
and
a great
death. Yeah,
workout or you're fucking dead,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
Absolutely. And there's this mindset in bodybuilding where people think that they're going to find a steroid that's going to make them big, that they're going to find some special thing that's going to make them blow up,
Something's gonna
and that,
click,
yeah,
basically. There's
just
something
they're
gonna.
just waiting for that one compound that's
Hmm.
going to put 20 pounds of muscle on them, and maybe that's ment, maybe that's DHB, maybe
Yeah.
that's T-ball, maybe that's
Hmm.
something else, or insulin, or whatever it is. There's always something that we think is going to, but really, like you said, it's the
Hmm.
consistency, it's the hard work, it's doing this stuff for a really long period of time. And really, at the end of the day, it's about taking doses that you can manage for a long period of time so you
Right.
stay healthy enough that you can keep doing it, right?
Right.
Because it's
Right.
about the
Exactly.
total
That's a
time.
paradox, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah. If you
that
try and
minimum
run
effective
a ton of
dosage to.
Tren and
Yeah.
DHB and whatever else the hell you want to run, a bunch of orals, you're just going to hurt yourself. You're going to have to stop. Your body's going to make you stop, and you're not
Right.
going to grow anymore.
Right.
So this is why we harp on this. Like, not only is staying healthy something that is good to do because you're healthier, but it's also
Right.
good to do because you're going to be able to push this stuff longer, more safely, and you won't have to stop. That's the whole
Yeah.
point. It's like, really, bodybuilding is about how much food and how much drugs can you consume over a cumulative time period,
Right.
right? And if the more you can do, the more you're going to grow, generally speaking.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean just blast a shit ton for a short period of time, get
Right.
sick, and then stop. It means take a
Right.
little bit and
Hmm.
continue that slow drip for years and years and years and years, and you'll
Yeah.
get big, I promise. So
Yeah, and
that's
that's
my
the
take.
thing. No, and that's for sure. I mean, it's one of those things that, like you said, people. I guess every human wants the easy button. Like
Yeah, yeah,
easy.
yeah. There's some
But
compound, it's gonna make me grow. I know out there that exists somewhere that's gonna make me huge. It's
yeah,
just like,
absolutely.
it's
Rather
never
than
never been the case. It's
the terrible news of like, nah, you got to do this for years, bro.
yeah, you gotta do this for
So,
years. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Even though I will say though, like it does go faster than if you do it right. It's
Mhm.
actually it's slow, but it's not quite as slow as some other people might think either.
Yeah,
Like you can make
yeah,
great progress in 1 or 2 years if you're consistent,
yeah,
especially if you're new to this world of fitness. If you have the
yeah.
newbie gains.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
if you're new and you take a reasonable amount of testosterone, and
yeah.
in a year you can put on 20 pounds of muscle. And
Hmm.
for people that don't realize how much 20 pounds of muscle is, you just strap all those steaks to your body, and that'll
Yeah, I was gonna say
that'll
buy
tell you, a bunch of
21-pound
ribeye or something.
steaks
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah, I
slap
think
them all
Paul
over.
Paul Paul says this, so
Yeah,
I think that's Paul's thing.
yeah.
But I think it's a great thing to tell people, and I tell the people that I coach all the time. They'll be like, I can only put on 10 pounds in a year. That's the
It's like, you
most, and
don't know
it's
what
like,
that
man, that's a
means.
lot. That's a
Yeah,
lot of muscle, dude.
yeah. That's
So
a huge difference for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
So let's see. What else do I have here on the is there anything, let's see. Talking about like selfishly about people in my generation, our 40s, 50s, and so on. How do you have clients in my age range? Do you have any clients?
yeah.
Okay. And how do
I
you
got a
approach
50-year-old doctor I'm working with right now, which is pretty
Okay,
wild.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So how do you approach working with people who are how much do you modify your approach when it's an older client? Anything to keep in mind other than perhaps, I don't know, being more aware of wear and tear and fatigue and recovery? Is there anything else? What else kind of pops into your head when you're dealing with that with
I
that?
think I think trying to keep inflammation as low as possible. I think
Oh,
that's
okay.
something that I keep an eye on.
Hmm.
The other thing I'd keep an or try to do is just run more growth hormone than I
Okay.
otherwise would.
Right.
I think
Right.
that works really well with older guys.
Hmm.
And just trying to keep the anabolics like not super high, generally speaking. The
Yeah.
other thing you really want to keep an eye on with old guys is lipids. Like, I
Yeah.
don't I don't let any of my clients that are over 40 have an LDL that's higher than 70. I mean, in
Yeah.
general, I don't either, but specifically, older guys, like,
Hmm.
that heart attack risk is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I think the lipids need to be managed tighter, specifically as you get older. I think that's like probably the biggest needle mover in terms of, staying healthy on this stuff. And also keeping up with the imaging. I think a lot of older guys, they can afford it, which
Hmm.
is fantastic. So, echocardiograms, once a year,
Once a year.
potentially,
Okay.
yeah, CT angiogram, make sure the heart isn't growing, because if you get AFib, your
Mhm.
heart gets too big, from a ton of GH.
Yeah.
that's all bad too. And, those kind of things. And obviously, just keeping blood pressure a little lower than I otherwise would, and
Yeah.
just keeping an eye specifically on kidney stuff. That's my big concern too. As you
Oh,
get
that's
older,
right, because we lose naturally kidney function as
yeah,
we age, right? That's just
yeah.
part of the aging process.
Yeah, so I'm
So,
bringing in typically with an older guy, I'm bringing in like finerenone at 10 milligrams to block the mineralocorticoid receptor to stop any fibrosis in the kidneys. I think
oh,
that's
wow.
a big one for me. You have to be careful
So
using it,
I was
but
gonna say, just for the record, I only have one kidney due to trauma. I had
yeah.
an incident when I was 17.
Hmm.
So the other one, of course, hypertrophied and gross.
Yeah,
My kidney
yeah.
function is
Many people are only born with one anyways, and they're
yeah,
fine.
right. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of like there. So anything you say about kidneys, I'm gonna pay extra attention to.
yeah. Yeah,
So
so I usually use finerenone. You just have to be careful if you have a reduced ejection fraction, and if you
mhm,
have like underlying hyperkalemia, or if you're close to the top of the reference range with potassium,
uh-huh,
because it does raise your potassium quite a bit. So this is probably something you'd want to use under the guidance of a coach.
okay,
But I think that's a really good strategy for protecting the kidneys and the heart too, blocking the
mhm,
mineralocorticoid receptor. In animal studies, I think, if I remember correctly, they give animals, I don't remember which animal it was, but they gave animals super physiological doses of androgens.
mhm.
And when they block the mineralocorticoid receptor, they stop fibrosis in the kidneys and in the heart completely.
Wow.
So it completely gets rid of that concern.
So are you
Um,
thinking of it as a even as a preventive
mhm.
prophylactic measure even?
Yeah.
Not yeah. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know for
Yeah,
sure.
it's hard to get, but it is one of those things that I think is relatively safe if you manage it properly. Just make sure, you don't have any underlying heart issues when you take it, and your potassium is not like sky high. So
Nice.
supplementation becomes a concern on this stuff. If you're doing a ton of, potassium citrate or new salt or something like that,
Yeah.
probably adjust your diet before you mess with this stuff, because hyperkalemia is no joke. It'll put you in the hospital.
Okay.
So that is my take there. But yeah, that's a great option for, I think, for older guys, specifically for the kidney protection, just to stop the remodeling in the kidneys and in the heart.
Mhm.
And then just the standard stuff, astragalus,
Yeah.
vitamin C
Strangulus
is
is the bomb.
huge.
Yeah.
There's a
Oh,
lot of
which one? I'm sorry?
vitamin C is huge
Oh,
for
vitamin
kidney
C, just as
protection.
a mitochondrial, from the mitochondrial standpoint, vitamin C? Is it
No, no, it reduces inflammation in the kidneys.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, yeah, there's boldenone, there's, again, rat studies, but
Right.
they gave rats vitamin C, and they were able to basically completely get rid of the inflammatory signal in the kidneys with that. The other thing you really want to stay away from, and a lot of people do this, they'll
Mhm.
take like a baby aspirin every day,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
which gets rid of the
I've heard.
prostaglandin response in the kidneys. And if you
Mhm.
already have high hematocrit and AR signaling at the kidneys, like from
Mhm.
androgens, that can potentially make it a lot worse. So a lot of people have this like thing where it's like, oh, like maybe my blood is a little thick from having higher hematocrit, so I'll take, potentially some
To
baby
thin it out
aspirin
or
to
yeah,
thin it out, so I have less of a stroke risk. That's
right.
really only a concern if your platelets are high, or if your hematocrit is terribly high, and there's
Mhm.
better ways to deal with it than taking a baby aspirin every day, from my perspective. I would never do that.
Yeah.
So another
Not that I
thing with
know, but
kidney
I've
pro
heard nattokinase, for example, might be a
Yeah.
better approach, something like along
Yeah,
those
something like
lines.
that. Yeah, you can bring down your hematocrit a little bit there, and then you can take a angiotensin receptor blocker, telmisartan, or any one of the
Yeah.
that usually brings it down like 2 points, and then just proper hydration and stuff. But yeah, I
Cool.
really definitely avoid the NSAIDs, I think, as a prophylactic. If you want to take an NSAID because you strained your shoulder or something like for a few
Mhm.
days, yeah, totally fine. But not something I'd take every day, especially for older guys that have reduced kidney function on
Yeah.
androgens. So
So, are there any specific biomarkers you look for longevity? Like maybe a couple that you kind of specifically keep an eye out in your, or is it just like you said, like just overall with the caveats we just discussed? Do you like any particular markers that maybe a novice could at least understand when they get their blood work back from the doctor from a GP?
yeah,
Is
I
there
think, I
anything that
mean,
they can monitor?
the big ones like we talked about are, LDL cholesterol,
Hmm.
and then obviously ApoB. Like those are going to
Hmm.
be the biggest longevity drivers.
Gotcha.
Getting those things low, because then you won't have a heart attack. you know.
Right.
So
Right.
so that's what kills most people is heart attacks, right? And
Yeah.
having a low LDL cholesterol is a big longevity thing. You always want to take a look at inflammation too,
Mhm.
is huge, and a lot of people never check LP little a.
Oh, okay.
uh you know what LP
I
little a is?
wasn't even familiar with it, so have at it. I'm your guinea pig. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's an independent risk of cardiovascular disease. It's another lipoprotein. So
Okay.
you can have low LDL cholesterol, and it's a genetic thing. So if you have
Oh.
high LP little a, genetically, you can still get heart disease, plaque buildup specifically from having a high LP little a. And you really only have to check that once because it's a genetic thing, and there's really no way to bring it down yet. They're making
So
drugs
it's
to do it
just
right
like an
now.
awareness thing. Like, be aware that you have this thing, so then you
So what
can
you have to do if
adjust
you have,
lifestyle.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, what you have to do if you have a high LPA is you have to crush your LDL cholesterol basically to
Oh,
zero.
okay.
Yeah.
Just
So
crush
you
it.
have to like get it to like 20, which
Whoa.
sounds kind of
Okay.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only way to handle it right now.
How do you do that, by the way? Diet? Would diet do that?
No, you have to take statins and Repatha and
Okay.
ezetimibe, and yeah, you have to hammer it down. So, but a lot of people aren't checking their LP little a, and that's an independent risk of cardiovascular disease separate from LDL cholesterol and ApoB. So we always want to check that just at least one time to
Mhm.
understand if we have that genetic predisposition. And
Okay.
once you check it one time, it's not going to change really.
Right.
And if it's low, don't worry about it. You're good. You know what I mean? Don't
Yeah.
check it again.
And if
But
it's high, then you gotta crush your LDL, I
yeah,
guess,
pretty
right? You
much.
gotta
They're
okay.
working on drugs right now to bring it down actually
Mhm.
directly. So those should be out relatively soon. I'm gonna try to get my hands on them before they're approved because there's good safety data on them now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a big thing. I mean, unfortunately, right now the technology is not really there to fix the problem.
I see.
So you have to kind of just crush your LDL cholesterol down, which can be associated with some kind of weirdness, but
Mhm.
I think the risk from high LP little a is can be pretty nasty, especially when you combine that with, an inflammatory state from androgens, and
Yeah.
you're just going to build more plaque overall when you're on steroids, basically. So,
Yeah.
so
I
that's
mean, that's
definitely
just a
something I
given.
check.
That's the
Yeah,
price of admission, right? That's the
yeah,
cost of doing
yeah.
business
And I think
almost.
many people forget about or don't even know about it. So whenever a coach signs up a new client, you ask them, have you ever had your LP little a checked? And if they haven't, then you just test it once. It's not that
Mhm.
expensive, and you get it out of the way, and you don't have to check it again. So
I'm gonna go ahead and
yeah,
do that one because I
yeah,
don't think I've ever done that check, so why not?
yeah.
Great.
They just added it to the guidelines in the new. I think it was the American Heart Association just added it to the new guidelines. So
Nice.
it's in there, but they slacked on it. I mean, I've known about this for like 4 years, and they just find they're incredibly
It's
slow.
bureaucracy, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Nobody's making money off of just
yeah.
disseminating this good information,
Yeah, and
so
they haven't really added it because there's no good way to treat it currently.
right, right.
So
It's
it's
almost
there's no
like, do you
profit
wanna know?
motive. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's no profit motive. Basically, all you have to just crush your LDL cholesterol. So that's the only way you can
yeah.
really deal with it now. So, but hopefully soon we'll have a good solution for that.
So speaking of statins, since we're kind of in that direction, like I was prescribed after my last visit last year at the cardiologist, I somehow fall in this range where, like, due to my age, actually, is what he said, because I'm 55. Like, he recommended a statin. I'm like, okay, but statistically, does it make a difference? He's like, you are right on the edge, whether it might or might not, honestly. So I'm giving you the option to take it
Hmm.
should you want to. And
Yeah.
I decided, I'll take it because unless there's some weird side effects, which, by the way, the first one I tried was rosuvastatin, maybe
Yeah,
robustatin.
it's pretty side effect prone.
Yeah, and it was my everything ached, my whole
Yeah.
body ached. It was awful.
Hmm.
Then I did. I think the one which one is it that I take now? It might be Crestor, like the generic Crestor,
Hmm. The
atorvastatin.
torvastatin. Yeah.
I think that's what it is, and that one's no problem. Don't
Yeah.
even realize I have it. So go figure.
Yeah, it's what they do is it's a risk calculator. So they basically plug in your age, and then they plug in your LDL cholesterol, and then it tells you basically how likely you are to die or have not die, but have a heart attack on a 10-year basis.
Right, right. That's
So
what he
it's
mentioned.
it's
Exactly.
usually like 2%, 0.5%, somewhere in
That was
that
something like
range,
that. It was like,
which
yeah,
is
0.5% or
high, which
something.
is kind of uncomfortable when you start getting older because it starts going up and up and up and
Yeah,
up.
yep.
So the risk increases. Yeah, and I think with the statins specifically, there's they do cause some insulin resistance. So if that's a concern and you're a
Oh, okay.
bodybuilder, you want to be on pitavastatin. It's not quite as strong as rosuvastatin, but
Mhm.
what you can do is you can combine pitavastatin at 4 milligrams with ezetimibe and get a similar LDL cholesterol lowering effect that you would with rosuvastatin without causing the insulin resistance.
Wow,
So
okay.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I
it
didn't know about
does.
the insulin resistance angle at all. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it does. It'll crank up your A1C a little bit. I mean, if you check before and after,
Uh-huh.
it'll probably go up by a point or half a point, something like that. I mean, the test isn't that accurate, frankly, but
Yeah.
you might see a point. It's not egregious.
Yeah.
But there is, especially if you're already pre-diabetic, you see this a lot with
Mhm.
people that start statins, where it'll actually push them over into diabetes if they're already doing bad. It's not a huge concern with our population because we're so healthy and insulin
We
sensitive.
tend
We
to
got
be
tons of
lean
muscle.
too, so
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But anything you can get, I think that's the way that I see it. Any little benefit you can get there,
Yeah.
not causing insulin resistance, preferable from my
Sure.
perspective. It's
Sure.
kind of the
If
same thing with telmisartan, where there's other drugs that lower your blood pressure just as
mhm.
well, but telmisartan gives you a little insulin sensitivity, and that's a nice bonus. So
Yeah, and I
it's
keep
one of
hearing
those things.
that it's for some reason, at least somewhat, kidney protective for some reason. I forget what the specific mechanism was,
Yeah, it
but there's
dilates the
some
efferent arteriole in the
Oh, okay.
kidneys, which is like the inlet to the
Uh-huh.
kidneys. So
Mhm.
there's like a hose that goes in there.
Mhm.
And the smaller that hose is, the more pressure. Obviously, it's like
Okay.
hydraulics.
Right.
So if you dilate that and vasodilate it a bit, then you have basically less fast blood rushing in there, like per volume per unit time, or however you'd say it.
Gotcha.
So that can improve. It dilates that preferentially. It dilates sort of everything in your body, but it
Mhm.
sort of preferentially dilates that more. So then you have reduced risk of basically hammering the glomeruli with blood, that would
Yeah.
otherwise be, moving a little quicker than it should, and, at a higher volume than it should.
Yeah,
So
I will say I used to be on losartan, and ever since I switched to telmisartan, it has been like my blood pressure dropped like 10 points.
that's
It was
awesome. Yeah.
it's a huge difference. Like
Yeah.
enough that my GP was like, because I asked him, he's like, sure, let's try it. Why not? If
Yeah.
he read about it. He's like, sounds good. He was stunned like a couple months later, 3 months later when we did
It's
blood
got a
work.
longer half-life. I think losartan has a shorter half-life, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's
So
it. Yeah.
it's a little more consistent. And like that's what you want with blood pressure lowering, is you want
Yeah. You want it to be
consistency.
like,
Yeah. You want it to be as flat as possible.
yeah,
But yeah, that's a good telmisartan's a much better way to go, I think. Just
absolutely.
primarily because of the half-life, if we're being honest. It's not even the insulin sensitivity thing. It's just the consistency
Yeah,
across the day.
it is. And combine it with nebivolol, is it the other one that you can?
Yeah. The Vivalol is
Those
great.
two
Yeah.
seem to work amazing for
Are
me.
you're
Like,
on Nabivol right now?
yep,
Yeah.
2.5,
Oh,
2.5 a
that's
day.
nothing. That's
Yeah.
really low.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm on
And
10,
it
man.
made a difference though.
Yeah.
It did make a difference. So
Yeah,
go
no,
figure.
it'll lower your heart rate quite a bit, and it'll give you potentially better pumps in the gym too. So
So yeah, I was gonna say like that was
yeah,
one thing that was noticeable. Like a couple weeks after starting it, it seemed to take a little bit,
yeah,
but I did notice that for sure, for sure,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's quite strong. The telmisartan will actually give you pumps in the gym too, but we're
there you
all
go.
on it all the time, so we never really notice the difference with this
Well,
stuff because we're
the what I was telling Paul, the Achilles Joe Blow analogy. Like
yeah,
when you're optimizing food, nutrition, sleep, rest, and your AAS, you're a
yeah,
demigod at that point. You
pretty
feel
much,
like a
yeah,
demigod. Like you can like lose no battle. And then
yeah,
you do a health phase, you drop down
yeah,
to regular TRT, and all
yeah,
of a sudden, like I'm like, man, I got aches in my joints and shit. And Paul laughed. He
yeah.
was like, bro, because you're a normal human, you're 55.
Yeah,
You
because you're a
know, like
55-year-old man. That's just the game, bro.
exactly.
Like, yeah,
That's just how it is. That's
yeah,
normal.
yeah, yeah,
So, but
yeah. I will
it
say
is
all
so
this
funny.
optimization stuff like really improves your life a lot if you do it correctly.
It really does. It really does. And
Yeah,
I think there's definitely I mean, we talk about polypharmacy so much, right? Like
hmm
all these combinations of all these drugs, peptides,
hmm
and so forth. But it is definitely you can find a solution that works for you very specifically,
yeah,
which I love that you can
yeah,
actually tailor those results and like I said, you can do some effects that it's wild. It's wild
Yeah.
that you can like, let me drop my blood pressure back into like slightly below normal range, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just
It's
move
like
this compound.
you can
Yeah,
do whatever you want. It's like anything physiological that you want to change,
yeah,
you can pretty much just do it, which
yep,
is, totally insane when you actually think about it. And the average person doesn't get that. Like
yeah.
they have no idea.
I
Like,
think the
you
average
know.
person lives a life of like, I've always said, like, they just listen to their GP and they don't realize that ultimately you're the CEO of your own health and that doctor works for you.
Hmm.
You know, that doctor, it's a subject matter expert that you're hopefully consulting so
Yeah.
that then, but you end up making the decisions. You know, the consultant will tell you, well, I would do this, I would do that, I would do the other
Hmm.
thing. But there's so many people in our American healthcare system that are just there to be told what to do. And it's bizarre.
Yeah.
You know, like when you
Yeah.
have a general practitioner who hasn't had a nutrition class in 30 years,
Yeah.
they have no idea, like, how to even eat because
Yeah.
it's not in their wheelhouse. It's a class they took in college,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think
and
a big problem with the doctor thing is that they're just so overworked. And I would
yes.
like to think that if they had more time to do research and get into this stuff,
Hmm.
that they might be more effective doctors. I don't know if that's true at all, but
I believe that. I believe that. And
I
I'll tell
think,
you what, I'll give you some anecdotal information. My best friend is a plastic surgeon,
yeah.
and he's like a badass plastic surgeon. He's actually the head of the American Medical Association in Puerto Rico.
Oh
He's
wow,
like
that's
yeah,
awesome.
so US territory, like so he knows his shit. And he has always told me that the volume of patients he gets precludes him from giving the healthcare the depth that he would love to give because he just cannot.
Hmm.
Like if he slowed down enough to be able to provide that, it would literally like he wouldn't be able to even pay for the practice to remain open,
Yeah, yeah,
So that's
100%. Yeah,
unfortunate.
it's a shame that like the people that are responsible for keeping us healthy,
Hmm.
we force them to be unhealthy by overworking them, from
Right?
medical school to practice,
Yep.
essentially. And it's like it's when you think about how unhealthy medical school is. I mean, they got those guys up for like, 18 hours
Yeah.
straight. They had to change the laws because they had them up for like 20, 30 hours straight and they were
Yeah.
fucking up.
Talk about like developing
So
plaque in your brain,
yeah,
and,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's
and not recovering ever.
the way that our society treats the people that are supposed to be like the bastions of health is just insane. Like it's,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what's wrong with the healthcare system, I think, is that, we don't allow these people to be healthy themselves or
Right.
allow them to make other people healthy. And it's not any knock on doctors specifically.
No,
It's
no,
just that the
it's the way
system
the
isn't
system
set
has
up for
evolved.
success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
One,
So,
the incentive structures are very hard to. How do you align an incentive structure where you're doing true healthcare rather than sick care?
yeah.
Where you can incentivize, doctors and patients both to do things preemptively to improve their health so
Yeah.
that, the more, critical interventions are not required as often,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I do get, again, that you and I have talked about this. It's human nature to want the easy pill. Just give me the pill.
Yeah, just give me the
I want
pill,
to keep
yeah.
eating ice cream and Doritos. Give me the pill.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah. I mean,
you know,
that's honestly, dude, that's why I take a statin because I just enjoy having a steak every once in a while. I
yeah,
don't
man.
want it to affect my health
Yeah.
negatively. So,
Every once in a while, I'm an ice cream
yeah,
fiend. So,
yeah,
like
yeah,
lately, I've learned to love gelato because it tends to have very low fat. So at least it's just carbs that I
yeah,
have to worry
yeah,
about.
yeah,
So
yeah.
fine, no saturated fats. I'll
Well, I
take it.
mean, yeah, just carbs you can justify as a bodybuilder, right?
Oh
It's like
yeah, for sure.
why we can like justify gummy worms before we go lift or whatever.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah. The gummy bears, I love
Yeah,
those for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. That's my
It's
shit, dude. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and
good.
people are so like it's so funny to me that we have as bodybuilders through trial and error over decades, we've come up with things that are actually science can then verify, oh shit, they actually were onto something and this is why. We didn't
Yeah,
know the why, like
yeah,
20 or 30 years ago. People could have this completely wrong idea of the mechanism of action of these things,
yeah.
but the practices that they did still had the positive results. They just didn't know what they were doing as far as
Yeah.
how to explain or how it worked,
Well,
but
it
they
was, I
knew it
think that
worked.
was, I was talking to Marky on his podcast the other day.
Mhm.
Marky Vincent, he said he would be in his nutrition class and he told his nutrition professor told him that you couldn't absorb more than like 30 grams of protein per meal.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Chestnut.
And he's like,
Yeah.
dog, I know for a fact that's not true because bodybuilders have been eating way more than that for like
Oh,
the better part of 30 years and like, or
yeah.
40 years at this point. And, you know, of course, evidence comes out,
Yeah.
probably 10 years later, no upper limit to muscle protein synthesis with whey protein at 100 grams. Right. So,
Right.
it's that kind of stuff that like a lot of the time, and we're talking about that earlier, a lot of the
Mhm.
time the science is not ahead of the information that we have in bodybuilding.
Right.
It can point us, in a direction what science we should be looking at, but a lot of the time the science is way far behind what
Right.
we know as bodybuilders. And that's just, I mean, and that's like the bro science thing. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the bro science does not get enough credit for, how good it is, frankly, and how
Yeah.
good we've gotten with it, because we all communicate, we all talk to each other. So if there's a problem
Mhm.
with a compound, I mean, we all know it, we all
Yeah.
know it immediately, essentially,
Yeah, we all know it. Like,
especially when that,
there's recently I keep hearing that GH is getting hard to find. So, I scrambled for a while there. Now that seems to be over. But the speed at which we can communicate things and respond in the community in this world now,
yeah,
it's phenomenal. Like you can
yeah,
share info, something happened, and in 24 hours the world can know. You know,
yeah. And it's that way
that's
with,
crazy.
with sourcing too. I mean, when
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a bad source and I see like high CRP on someone's blood work, and
Hmm.
then we switch to some other source, you
Uh-huh.
know, I
And all of a sudden
immediately
everything's
tell
fine.
everyone, don't buy this shit. You
Yeah,
know what I
whatever
mean?
they're
So,
using, whatever the
yeah,
carrier oil is, or whatever
yeah,
they're adding in there,
yeah, exactly.
it's just
So,
bad news.
yeah.
So let me ask you more of now moving away, still in the enhanced space, but what do you think? It seems like the last few years we've made great strides with people like Ryan Root, for example, like evangelizing the fact that the hormones are not bad. Okay, testosterone is not evil and should
Mhm.
not be illegal to to purchase or be prescribed testosterone. Like all this gatekeeping seems very unnecessary. What
Mm.
are your thoughts on changing people's attitudes towards at least the bioidentical ones? Let's say growth hormone and testosterone. Those I can I've
Hmm.
never heard of anybody dying from a testosterone overdose,
Yeah.
that I
No,
can
I hear
think
you. Yeah.
of, you know?
It's a
So what are
hard
your thoughts on
it's
that?
a hard one because I think people have a negative association with bodybuilders for some reason,
Yeah.
which I don't, and bodybuilding is going to be associated with hormone replacement, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if many of these people have ever walked into a gym and talked to these big bodybuilders, because they're all the sweetest people you'll ever meet in your entire life.
Yeah.
And I think it just looks, people don't like the way that it looks, and people don't
Okay,
like
do
the
you think
association that
so
with
do you think they don't like
testosterone.
the way it looks, not for the aesthetics, or is it because of the
It's because they can't do it.
rarity of it?
They
Yeah,
know they can't do
exactly.
it.
Exactly,
They
because
know
they
they
can't
can't
figure
do
out how
it,
to do
and then they're like, why
it.
don't I, why don't I look that good? I think
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
lot of it, is kind of
that's true.
a deep down jealousy where they, kind of just hate hormones and bodybuilding in general because, they have some kind of inherent sort of like, I want to be that big and manly and jacked. That's
Yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
but they
Yeah,
don't want to admit that to themselves. I hear it all the time where it's like, where people will tell you like, oh, I would never want to be that big. And it's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Really? It's
I
like, are you
don't,
sure?
yeah, I don't know. It's pretty
Let
awesome.
me let's see if that's true. If I could snap my fingers and make you that muscular, would you take it?
Right.
And
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
the answer, oh, absolutely. It's like, well, then
Yeah. It's
this is
yes,
not the
probably
problem,
yes
brother.
every time. Yeah, exactly. And but
Yeah.
I think that association maybe with some, the jealousy fact and the fact that it's like seen as cheating,
Mhm.
right? That like,
Right, right.
which
Which is
is a
so bizarre
bizarre way to
because
frame it. Yeah.
you still have to put in it's like an extra. It's not an in place of,
But the
you know?
question is who are you cheating against?
Yeah.
Right?
I
Like
mean,
it's not a,
my
like,
joke has always been that bodybuilding is the only sport I know where cheating is not only encouraged,
yeah.
it's part of the sport,
Yeah,
literally.
anything you can do.
Whatever
That's the
edge you
beauty
can
of it.
get.
Yeah. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's synthol
Yeah.
or whatever else you want to use,
Whatever makes
you can
those
do it.
judges pick you.
Yep, yep,
Whatever
yep,
that
yep,
is,
yeah. It's
that's
kind
what
of a
you're gonna
beautiful
do.
thing at the end of the day. But I think I think that's something that people associate hormones with bodybuilding and
Right.
cheating and all
Mhm.
these kind of nasty things. And I think there was just I think it was the 1990s with all the
Oh, Bonds
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Maguire and all
All the
that.
congressional stuff that really like
Yeah,
it was like a targeted campaign to get rid of this stuff in the
yeah,
public eye and make it look bad, which I don't really understand why that was necessary. But you know, I guess it just sort of happened and the drugs became scheduled and everyone has sort of this same thought about these things now just
yeah.
because they were exposed to that. But I think you see it in younger people where there's more acceptance because they weren't
Mhm.
exposed to that the congressional stuff from the 90s and you know, so I think that's why a lot of younger people are kind of getting into bodybuilding now is because
Yeah,
it's not seen as like the dark horse anymore necessarily that it
yeah.
was for, you know, people in their 40s, 30s, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, I think that's changing a bit now. And I think
Yeah.
really, and no offense to old people, but it's
Mhm.
hard to change an old guy or girl's mind on things.
Sure. I
And I
mean,
think
you're talking
often, you know,
about
you can really
years
just
of experience and memories
yeah.
and things to
You can really
overcome.
just target the young generation, and it seems like they're coming around to bodybuilding and hormones and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
think that is a fantastic thing. I mean, you know, the downsides are the kids are using this stuff, but the upsides
Right.
are is that, you know, maybe when they're 30 or 40, they'll be more open to hormone replacement. Maybe they'll become a doctor and they'll be more open to it.
Mhm.
And we can just kind of start talking about this stuff because it's improved all of our lives so drastically. And
Yeah.
that's really the bottom line is that like we're so much better, you know, husbands and boyfriends and
Mhm.
friends because we can be on anabolics and we can, you know, we can get shit done and be, you know, in a good mood and, you
Oh,
know,
vitality is
yeah,
priceless.
it's
Like, we were
huge,
joking about
man.
the vitality meter, but really, honestly, your quality of life, your ability to spend do more vacations, you're in your 50s and you can still travel and learn and take your kids and,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot to
A lot to be
be,
said there.
said
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's a huge deal. So that's my perspective. I think things are improving. I think bodybuilding's getting bigger and no one's going to be able to stop
Mhm.
it.
Yeah,
You know, I think it's just going to be something that most people do, you know, at
yeah.
some point. It's cuz it's not slowing down, you know. It's
No, it's growing.
the last probably 6 7 years have just been a massive increase in the amount of people that are interested in this stuff, you
Yeah.
know, and optimization and hormones and all that. So I think it's a really good thing generally speaking if we can get people good information so they don't kill themselves, you know.
Yeah, true, true.
Yeah.
And the other thing and this is as somebody who I'm relatively new to watching the sport in more detail. Now that the last couple of years I've been actually involved. I don't know if you know this, but the reason I even did a show was because of my son, who's a
Oh,
young
nice.
man. Yeah, he's a young man. He has Down syndrome. He's 28,
Okay.
and he wanted to do a show, and he's actually really jacked.
Oh,
Like
really?
he's
That's
really,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. He's been going to this trainer he's a specialist in working with people with special needs.
Mhm.
So he goes there once a week, but then he started kind of bodybuilding with me, going with me to the gym and all that. And he wanted to do a show, so we did a
That's
show last
awesome.
year for
How
the
old is he?
first
How
time
old did you
ever.
say he was?
He's 28. I'll send you the
Oh,
pictures
wow.
and all that. There's
That's
like videos on the
fantastic.
channel if you want to
Wow.
check it
Yeah.
all out.
That's awesome, man.
It was
Did he
crazy.
place?
He did. He won his division, actually.
Holy shit.
It was a smaller local show, but
Well, he's got
still,
good genetics. I mean, he's got the right genetics, you know,
he's
there,
got
so it makes
man,
sense.
he is the only person I know that can hit 20% body fat and have like washboard abs. It's
Oh man, I'm
crazy.
jealous. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
all
that's
genetics
awesome,
right there. That's
dude.
from his mom.
I'll DEXA scan myself at like 15%, and
Yeah.
I'll look fat as shit. It is a horrible situation.
Yeah, that's
So
kind of where I'm
I'm
at
very
right now.
jealous.
Like I'm
Yeah.
at the end of that growth phase. We're about to I think we're if he's gonna do for sure a show in October 25th.
Hmm.
I might do that show if my wife allows me.
Okay.
Because, hey, let's talk about anecdotal data. I
Yeah.
was an absolute asshole to everyone around me the last 4 to 6 weeks before the show.
Were you on Tren
I,
or you were just hungry?
uh, all the things.
All
it
the
was
things.
it was like
Awesome.
so first time ever doing a deep cut like that. I went from I think I started around 205 or 208 and ended
Hmm.
up at 168 on
Oh, and
stage.
how
It was a
long?
40-pound 16 weeks.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, it was crazy. The Paul got me ripped though.
That's eye watering. Oh my
Yeah, no,
god.
no, he got
Wow.
me ripped. Like, which is why I think he and I both are interested. Like, should I? I mean, I'm gonna do the cut anyway, even if I don't actually do a show,
Hmm.
because I'm gonna do it with him. since
Yeah.
he will go to the show for sure.
Yeah.
So if my wife lets me, then the week before the show, I'll like sign up and get my tan and
Yeah, yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
She's
in
like,
any
"Why are you
case,
getting so lean? What are you preparing for?" And you're like, "Nothing.
oh,
I'm
she
just
knows. I
yeah."
already told her. I
That's
already told her
awesome.
I'm going to, regardless, you're gonna get
Yeah.
the diet thing, and
Yeah.
I will strive and make sure to not be an asshole because I did learn.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Tren. I did, I did try Tren I think it was the last 6 weeks, maybe
How'd you do
8.
on it? Were you okay?
I was okay, except it made me. I'm very gregarious by nature and friendly.
Yeah.
I do have a short temper, but it's not super short.
Yeah.
And I'm very like somebody will annoy me, but it's like I end up like helping them usually,
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
that
yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
But man, it made me into like this. I would have been you know what I would have been? I could have been a professional hitman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my decision making was everything was cold, calculated, and ruthless. I
Yeah.
negotiated buying a car while, while on Trent, and it was like the salesman didn't even know what hit him.
They just gave it to you for free. They're just like, "Here you
Almost,
go, man."
almost. It
Yeah.
was like, well, because I didn't give a shit. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, so this is what I'm prepared to offer. Oh no, we need to do this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, okay, well. And as soon as I
Yeah.
did that thing, I was like, whoa, wait. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's
you
awesome.
said no.
Yeah.
So
Wow,
so that was
dude.
the but I
Yeah.
will say though, from my perspective though, I felt great. It was
Mhm.
very euphoric, very it was great to be that sharp all the time.
Yeah.
It made me I guess with the ADHD it worked. I was like an intellectual switchblade,
Yeah, because it's
as far.
it's gonna crank up your dopamine just like Adderall does, or anything
Oh
else,
shoot,
right?
okay, I hadn't even thought of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
I mean,
okay.
it's like it's almost like a stimulant
Yeah.
at
Yeah, that's what
this.
it felt like low level, always kind of like ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I hear that a lot with like clients and stuff that have businesses, and they'll get on Tren and they'll just get like more stuff done in 6 months.
Oh, for sure.
Than they've done all the last 3 years or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can get a
But
lot done. You can get a
by
lot
the
done
way,
on
what
Tren.
are your thoughts on trend like in the off season? Because I've got some buddies who are doing that, and I'm kind of like, but what are you trying to do though? And we're talking like 10 milligrams a day.
Yeah,
Like just.
I think it's a good add-on.
Mhm.
If I try not to like push it past 4 or 5, 6 months,
Yeah,
but I think you could like frankly, I mean, I hate to be this guy, but I think you can get away with it longer than most people realize, especially
yeah,
like at a really low dose. I mean, you crank it up
yeah,
and it's usually a problem.
yeah.
But at a low dose, I very rarely see issues on blood work with it. Now, that
Yeah,
doesn't mean that there isn't something going on in your brain with amyloid plaque buildup where you're not sleeping, or
yeah,
potentially, causing mental issues or stuff like that. But, I think at least from a blood work perspective, that those low doses are tolerated pretty darn well. And that
yeah.
kind of harkens back a little bit to, the approved dose of this stuff, which was 76 milligrams, basically 50 milligrams total drug of
Hmm.
Tren without the ester.
With
Um,
is that a weekly total? 50
no,
milligrams?
I think it was every 2 weeks, but it changed a little bit. So it's a little
Okay,
less than we'd use it, like 50.
okay.
But they were giving it to like old women and stuff like that
Right, right.
with
So
cachexia and yeah,
it's a
muscle
completely
wasting,
different
surgical
drug you've worked.
recovery, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Prednisone. If people took a lot of prednisone, they'd give it to them to
Mhm.
reverse the muscle wasting, because
Yeah.
that's really all they had for certain immune stuff back then. It was just give people a ton of prednisone and pray.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they'd use Tren in that case occasionally, things like that. But yeah, it is a little bit lower. It's a little higher than we use it, but yeah, around that 25 milligram a week, something like that, is kind of
Yeah.
what it was approved at. It was also approved at 76 milligrams, 50 milligrams total Tren every 3 weeks. So there's those two, but
Yeah.
it's
Just
closer
to
to
be
that.
the.
So yeah, so I think it's tolerable for most people to run it at a low dose in the off season. Whether it makes a huge difference in muscle growth, I'm not super convinced that like Tren is a really strong anabolic necessarily.
Yeah. All I got out of it was like better composition. Like it
Yeah.
seems to like shuttle the nutrients in the right way.
Yeah,
But
and I think if you can improve your nutrient partitioning
Mhm.
specifically you can make some argument for it in the off season, but I don't see it as like
Yeah.
a primary hypertrophy drug necessarily. Like it's
No,
not
for
going to
sure.
really
Yeah.
contribute to like muscle growth to the degree that just like adding an extra 300 milligrams, 400 milligrams of testosterone would, right?
Yeah.
But as that nutrient partitioning agent, especially later in the off season when you're hammering a lot of food,
Yeah.
I mean, it technically makes you more insulin sensitive. It's almost like a diabetes drug.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So it's
So there
just
is a use case there for sure. Okay.
especially when you're hammering a lot of food, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hammering a lot of food, maybe with insulin too. But we're getting into stuff that that is a little sketchy. But yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I think it's reasonable to use in the off season. I just would, keep the duration as short as possible. But not something that I'd recommend for like a beginner, like
Oh,
obviously,
definitely.
you know what I
Definitely. That's
mean?
not, yeah.
If a beginner uses Tren on contest prep, I get that. That's
Right.
acceptable.
Sure, sure.
Your first show, you want to use Tren, no worries.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
if you want to use Tren in the off season, you should be a pretty big guy at that point and
Yeah.
really need that last
To
bit of
justify it,
push.
right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. Because
yeah,
why
that's
play
the
with
way
it?
I look at it.
All right. All right, man. Well, that's all the time we
Dude, it
have.
was
At
fun.
least I
Thank
have,
you
but
so
this was
much.
super fun. Who knows? Maybe we can do a part two and just we covered a lot of different topics, which is kind of how I love these things. That
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
the folks that watch this will get some value out of it. Folks, I'm gonna have Sean's information in the notes so that you can contact him for coaching or for whatever else. What so before we go, tell me, Sean, what is it that you've got in mind? What's in the future, near future? How can we what should the folks know about you? Or is there anything you wish to promote or make people aware of?
I do coaching. I do consult
Mhm.
calls too. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, I can help them out. Right now I'm working on the trend video. So we talked about that already, but that's kind of
Yep.
my main project right now. I think it's going to be like 3 hours of
Oh,
video.
wow.
Yeah, it's like
Solid.
right now, it's like almost 100 pages of script and citations and stuff. So it's pretty hefty. I'm kind of
It's a
scared to start
dive.
filming it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
gonna be
a
a lot of
dive.
work, but
Yeah.
it's almost done. We're getting there. So that's what's going on with me. Anyways.
Well, that's super fun. Sean, you've been an amazing guest, man. I'm very glad to have met you, man, and count
Thanks,
you
man. It's
as a
fun.
new
Yeah.
friend,
Yeah,
you know.
you too, man. Yeah,
So
let's do this every week or,
yeah,
once a month or something, whatever
Uh,
works.
yeah, once a month would be cool. And
Yeah,
then we can
yeah.
like shoot the shit. We can talk about like the current things with bodybuilding, current things within the biomechanical space or biohacking space, whatever we
Yeah,
heck,
yeah.
you know. I actually
Sounds
do
good.
a nerdy podcast too with Dr. Todd Lee and
Todd's the man.
Josh.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
Todd. Yeah.
and we do this crazy nerdy thing. If you want to jump in one day, let me
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know Todd personally, but I'd love to meet him and watching his stuff
Oh,
for a
he's
long
great.
time.
He's
So yeah.
super fun. He's like,
Yeah.
he comes across as the curmudgeon, but dude, he's got a heart of gold.
Dude, I
He's a
think we
great
need
guy.
more curmudgeons in bodybuilding. I kind of like it.
Yeah,
So
for sure, for sure. And he plays the role well.
yeah, yeah.
And he knows his stuff. So
Cool.
and very entertaining to talk to, smart as can be, sharp as a razor. So all right, brother. Well,
All right.
again, thank you so much
Thanks.
for the time. Guys, comment, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and see you next time.